Hello and welcome back to this channel. If you're new here, my name is Pami and this YouTube channel is designed to help you master DAZSTUDIO and to help you create the best video renders you can. In today's video, we're going to continue with the PLP framework, and in part 4, we're going to be applying what we learned in part 3, which is all to do with lighting. Now the lighting in this scene is absolutely abysmal. This is the same lighting that I had in my original scene all the way back in 2018, 2019. And what we're doing in this video series is I'm going back to my first render. I'm applying the framework to my first render to show you how it works. So when you go to your old renders or when you create your new renders, you're going to apply this framework, a thoughtful process, a step-by-step guide, and your renders are going to look even more better, and you're going to have a deeper thinking of what you are doing with your renders. You're not just doing things haphazardly, you're thinking about it, you're thinking about everything what a professional would think, and that's what I want for you, is for you to make progress. That's what this PLP framework is here to do, is to create a guide, a systematic approach for you to apply to your renders, and then you can take it from there. You can use what you want from here and apply it and create your own framework, your own system, and then build from that. That's what it's all about. So that's what the PLP framework is all about, is to give you a guide which you can use to make progress, and progress is what matters. So the first thing I need to do with this render is assess it. Again, we're going to assess the render. We need to see our starting point of this render. Let's have a look at some of the settings. So the first thing I want to do is go to my render settings here and click on general. And the first thing I noticed straight away is the auto headlamp is on. What does that mean? If the auto headlamp is on, that means that the camera I'm using right now is going to have its own light source. I don't want that. I want to control that, so we're going to turn that off. Then if we go to environment, I want to see what kind of lighting I'm using. So I'm going to go to environment, and I can see I'm using the dome and scene environment mode here, and I'm using the HDRI map as well. Don't want to use that because I want to have more control of the lighting, so we're going to look at that as well. And then finally, spectral rendering. Is that on? No, it's not, because again, like I said earlier on, I didn't know about spectral rendering all the way back in 2018, 2019. Nobody does when you first started. We don't think about these things, and I'm not using it, and I will be using it in this render. So those are the three kind of like areas I want to look at when I'm lighting my scene here. So I'm going to do those changes. I'm going to show you that as well. So as I said in part 2 of the PLP framework, this fountain here is going to be my main focal point, which means that my viewer's eyes are going to go towards that. And what I'm going to do is the lighting for this is going to be a lot brighter. So my viewer's eyes are going to go to that straight away. Wherever that lighting is going to be, it's going to be the brightest source. So this is going to be the brightest area here. Everything else is going to be slightly darker. That doesn't mean there's not going to be any lighting here for the rest of the scene, because I do still want to light the scene. It just means that the color that I'm going to use here is going to be a bright color. So I don't know what the color is going to be yet, but I know that this section here is going to be more brighter. It's going to be more apparent here. When you look at this scene, this is where your eyes are going to go to. So that's what it's all about. I'm being more systematic, more thoughtful in my approach. That's what we're trying to do here. So I'm not doing lighting haphazardly like I used to do very early on. I'm trying to be more thoughtful in my approach. That shows progress. That's what it's all about. So I'm not just going to just put any light there. I'm going to think about what kind of light I want to put there with all the learnings that we've got with part 3 of that lighting video. So highly recommend you watch that video if you haven't watched it. It's going to give you some great insights in terms of what we're doing here with this scene. So let's go and light this scene. The first thing I want to do is go to render settings and environment here. And I want to use scene lights because I want more control over the lighting. So the environment mode here, I'm just going to choose scene only. So you may be wondering, Pami, why have we still got light here if we're just using scene lights? Because when we go to the general option here, auto headlamp is still on, which means this camera here has got its own light source. I don't want that, so I'm going to choose never here, because I never want my camera to have its own light source. I want to control the lighting. I want full 100% control of that lighting for my scene. So I'm going to click on never here. The scene will go absolutely dark. That's fine. So now we know there is no lighting in that scene whatsoever. I'm in complete control of the lighting in this scene. So I'm just going to turn off the render mode here. Turn off the iRay preview mode. And now what I want to do is light my scene. So what I was thinking of, the vision I have in my head, is to have this as a nighttime scene. So I was thinking of using color theory And in terms of color theory, I wanted to have a nighttime scene. So I'm going to have a spotlight simulating a nighttime scene. So first thing I'm going to do is go to create here. Then I'm going to do new spotlight. I'm just going to click accept. It's going to be in the middle somewhere. That's absolutely fine. So here it is. Now you'll notice that the spotlight looks like this. It's just showing you what is being lit here because the preview lights are not on. So you can have the preview lights on if you want to, which means every part of this scene will be lit as a preview so you can see everything. So if we go to window here and do preview lights, you'll see everything is lit here so you can see everything. Sometimes I just like to turn that off and then see exactly what my spotlight's doing. I can see exactly what is going to be, or roughly where the lighting will be for the scene with this spotlight. What I want to do now is go and select my spotlight here and I'm going to move it. So what I was thinking about is I want it higher up here and I want it to come through here somewhere, and I want it to have some cool shadows as well. So that's why I've got it higher up here. I'm thinking, like I said, more thoughtful in my approach. I want some shadows here coming down. I don't want to light this part of the scene, but I do want to light a little bit on my character here. So let's do something like this. Again, I could spend hours on this. I'm sure you could as well. Now, I'm not going to spend hours on finding the exact correct position, but I do know roughly where it needs to be. Obviously, if I was creating this for my graphic novel, I would spend a lot more time on this scene here, making sure that lighting is absolutely, well, not perfect, but very, very good. Not such thing as being perfect, because that doesn't exist. You can get very close to perfection, but that doesn't exist. This is what I'm trying to do roughly here. That's absolutely fine for now. I can always adjust later. So let me go to my main camera and see what that looks like. Okay, so that doesn't look too bad. Let's do a IRA preview and see what that spotlight looks like. It probably won't light most of the scene because it's not bright enough because it's too far away. So let's go to spotlight here, the parameters and light here, and let's increase the luminous flux. So let's add a couple of zeros on the end of this as well, see what we get in. I'm gonna need a bit more, so maybe add a 1 at the end here. That'll do for now. Maybe add a 3 at the end here because I need to be a bit more brighter. There you go. So that doesn't look too bad. I'm kind of happy with that in terms of the positioning of the lighting. That's okay. So what I want to think about now, because it's a nighttime scene, I want to think about the color of the light. So generally the color of the light when you do nighttime scenes is some sort of like blue light. But why is it blue light? Again, deeper thinking. We're trying to think a bit deeper, more like a professional. Why is it blue light to simulate a nighttime scene? What is the reasoning behind this? Again, if we understand the reasoning behind something, then that adds to a level of knowledge, and then we can use that anywhere in our scenes. We understand why we are doing something, and when you understand why you're doing something, you have a better appreciation of it, and then you know when or where to use it in your scene for specific things. That is the nuances. That is the nuances when it comes to lighting or anything you're doing inside DAZSTUDIO or anything you're doing in your life. You need to understand the deeper reasoning, the why, because that is where you can make the most change, more progress. That shows progress because you're going to a deeper level. We're not doing surface level stuff here. We want to go a bit deeper into our knowledge. That's what it's all about. That's what this channel is all about, progress. So why do we use blue light when we're creating a nighttime scene? Let's go into that very briefly, just to give you some context regarding that so you can understand that, because that's what it's all about. We're always learning, always be learning philosophy. So this is the reason why. The Perkinje effect here, sometimes called the Perkinje shift, is the tendency for the peak sensitivity of the human eye to shift towards the blue end of the color spectrum at low illumination levels. This effect introduces a difference in color contrast under different levels of illumination. So what this means in layman terms, let's keep this simple, is when it's darker, when there's less light, our eyes start to perceive that color spectrum. Our eyes start to move into the blue color spectrum. So what does that mean? Here's a picture of a visible color spectrum here. So when it's nighttime, our eyes will shift to the blue spectrum. Now that doesn't mean you need to just use blue. As you can see, as we move more into the blue color spectrum, you can even go to some sort of violet light here or some sort of indigo light here, some of the kind of like purple spectrum. or even a little bit of green here. So you have a bit of play in terms of that spectrum to show your scene is now night by having those range of that blue color spectrum. So it doesn't need to be this specific blue color here. It could be this one here. It could be slightly higher. It could be slightly lower. Doesn't really matter too much. Again, it depends on what you're seeing, you're trying to do. If you could think about something like John Wick or some kind of scene or some sort of movie where there's a nighttime scene, look at the color of that scene. It's not completely blue. There's a slight tint to it of blue, bit of purple in there maybe even a little bit of green. You'll see that if you start to look for it, and that's what it's all about. So again, you have that play in that spectrum there where we don't have to go right into the blue. We can go between this blue spectrum here. Very, very important. So that is why we use some form of blue light, because that is the way our eyes perceive it. And when we see that in a film or a movie or something else, or even in some artwork, we understand that that scene is taking place at night because that's the way our eyes perceive it. So that's our deeper level of understanding of why we use blue light or some form of blue light in terms of creating our nighttime scenes. Hope that helps you in terms of thinking more deeper level, and then you can use that to your advantage when you're creating your scenes inside DAZSTUDIO. So back to this scene here, I'm going to go to the color section for our spotlight. I'm going to try and find a blue here. Let's try this one here, one of my preset colors here. How does that look? Not enough. Maybe I need to go a bit more. So let's go a bit higher here. Something like this maybe. That's okay. That's not too bad. Okay, so that looks more blue light here. That gives the impression as you're looking at it in real time watching this video, to me it does, that this is a nighttime scene. We have a light source coming from the left here that is coming like this. So I'm happy with that. I may need to change that color once I apply the spectral rendering. We'll see if we need to do that. The next thing I want to do is my geometry. So at the moment, my spotlight geometry is point light, which means it's very sharp shadows. I don't want sharp shadows. I want to have some sort of control over it. So let me go through some of these. So let me see what rectangle looks like. So you can see there's a bit of softness to that. That's pretty okay. We got a disc. Very similar to rectangle there in terms of the softness of these shadows. We go to sphere. Again, looks similar there. And then we go to cylinder here. And oh, there's a bit more there. So what I'm going to do is increase the height and width. So we're going to do something like 30. Again, I don't know what values to use. I'm just going through my experience and seeing what it looks like in terms of what I've done, right? All those renders that I've created, multitude of renders, changing these settings. I have some form of knowledge about when I change the height and width of this geometry of our light here. I know I'm going to get some sort of effect. I don't know what numbers I need to use, but I start off with a value and I work from there. So I'm going to go through again, rectangle. Let me see what it looks like. So you can see more shadows here in terms of softness of the shadows. Got a disc here. So I'm trying to decide which geometry I want to use for the best effect here. So right, I'm going to go with this here. So I think that's fine. I'm happy with that. Maybe you like the rectangle one, then you would choose that one here. You like these shadows here coming through. They look pretty cool, but I feel like I want to choose this cylinder one here because I want softer shadows, and 30 seems to be okay. I'm happy with that as it is. Now in terms of the spread angle, let me see with the spread angle, if I spread it more, so if I double it to 120, how does that affect my scene? So obviously I'm going to need to increase the brightness here, so I'm going to need to add a couple more numbers here. Maybe the intensity as well, let's put it to 150%. So we're getting a bit here and a bit here with the spread angle there. We lost a bit here. So I'm going to just put that to something like halfway. So we do something like 85 maybe. That's about halfway. I think I'm going to have to increase the light here a bit more. So I'm going to have to add an extra 1000. That's going to really brighten up my scene here. Put that back to 100%. That doesn't look too bad. Let me go back to my spotlight here. Let me just take off the eye-ray preview. So I want to shift that a bit more to the right there because I don't want that too bright there. I want a bit more here on my character. Camera. Let's go and see that in the eye-ray preview. Let's see. Let's get that time to kick in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is reduce that spread angle again because I don't want this lighting here. So let's put that back to 60, and I want to move that to spotlight again. So I'm going to move my spotlight more to the right. Let's do something like this. Go back to the iRay preview. Give it a few seconds for it to kick in. Okay, that's going to be fine for now. I think that's going to be okay. I'm going to leave it like that. That looks pretty cool with the light. Might need to go a bit darker with the light, but we'll see what with that happens. We'll see what happens with that. So happy with that. I've got my blue light there, which is showing you simulating darkness. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Now, because we've got blue light here, I'm going to use color theory. So as we went through with part 3 of the lighting, color theory, the opposite complementary color to blue is some form of orange. So we're going to have some form of orange light here, which is going to be our main focus here for our fountain. So that's what we're going to be focusing on next. So I'm going to turn off the iRay preview here, and I'm going to go to window, and I'm going to put my preview lights because I want to see everything now. I'm going to go to my perspective view here because I can't move my camera. Remember, it's locked here, my camera here from part 2. I've locked it all. I do not want to move this camera. I want to leave exactly where it is. So I'm going to use our perspective view to move around our scene. Don't want to see the depth of field there. So I want my light source to be in here, and I want it to be coming out like this, more powerful light. So what I'm going to be using is a spotlight here as well, and see what that looks like. So I have gone through previously and tried different forms. I've tried different primitives with emissive lights and all these things, and I found the spotlight to be the best in terms of creating the effect I want. Again, experiment. It's all to do with experimentation. Go through, try different lights, see what works, see what you like. If you like that specific effect, keep it. That's what it's all about. So again, it's all about experimentation, discovery. Very important when it comes to creating your scenes. You're not going to get it right the first time. Nobody gets it right the first time. Not even the professionals, not even me. You're going to tinker with the light. You're going to change certain things. You're going to change certain settings like we did here. I may go back and change the settings. That's what it's all about. So it's whatever you feel is right for your scene. That is what you're trying to do. There is no, again, right or wrong way to light a scene. Depends what you're trying to show, that vision you have in your mind of that scene, and then how you want to create it inside DAZSTUDIO. Again, I'm going to create another spotlight here. So create new spotlight. Start with the default settings. So now I have spotlight 1 and spotlight 2. So here's spotlight 2 here. Now I want it to be pointing up, obviously, and I want it to put it in that position here. So let's turn it around. Let's go to rotate here because I want it roughly in the middle here. Let's go to my perspective view so it gives me a better, show me exactly where it is. So let's zoom in a bit more. Go in here. Turn to the right. Up a bit here. Let's have a look at this positioning. So this is me doing it real time. As you can see here, it does take time. Roughly where we're putting, okay, that'll do for now, and then we can adjust as we put the lighting. So I'm gonna just leave it there. It's probably not in the right position. My gut's saying it's not in the right position. Let's see if my gut is right. So let's go to my camera here. That looks too lower down actually. Let me just bring it up. There we go. So again, turn on the iRay preview here, and we're going to see the blue light here, and then we're going to see this light here as well. So I'm going to go to spotlight 2 here. I'm going to go to light, and I'm going to increase the luminous flux of this. I'm going to add a couple of 5s here. Right, there it is. So there's my light there. And what I want to do is change the spread angle because I want it to come out like this. I want it to be like come out like this if possible. So I want the light source to be as wide as possible. So we're going to increase the spread angle. So I'm going to increase the spread angle to, I think the maximum is 180. So, and then with that, we need to increase the luminous flux. So I'm going to add an extra 1 at the end of this. Okay. So let me bring this up a bit more. Let's bring this out. Cool. Okay. Very, very bright there. Don't like that. It's far too bright because we haven't done the geometry for it. So the geometry, let's try rectangle. What does that look like? Don't like that. Disc. Sphere. Let's try cylinder. Okay, let's see what this looks like. So the cylinder's there. So if I'm bring this out a bit more here, so the cylinder's not right against that. So that's right at the edge now of that. That's not in the central location, so I want it a bit more central. Okay, I need to make it more wider, so width, let's try 30 here. And the diameter, we can leave the diameter as it is. I mean, we could try 30 here as well. It's just going to get bigger, isn't it? It's going to make it more softer lighting. Remember, the bigger the geometry, the more softer it's going to be. So I need to control the lighting here as well. Let's bring that down to 50% because it's just far too harsh here. Let's bring that in now. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. So if I go back to my main camera here, okay, that doesn't look too bad. Yes, and getting that kind of light here coming out like this, that doesn't look too bad. Now, obviously the one thing we haven't done is change the color. So let me go to the color here. Let's choose some sort of orangey light. So let's try one of these presets that I've got here. That's probably a bit too dark. Let's go a bit lighter. Let's try something like that. That's okay. So because of the color we've got here of our blue light, it needs to complement that. So it can't be too orangey, like really, really orangey. It needs to be a bit more yellowy here. So the problem we have right now is you can see the geometry there of our spotlight there. I don't want to see that geometry. So what we can do is go to the render emitter here for our spotlight 2 and turn it off. And it almost becomes like a ghost light. Now technically it is still there. So if I go to perspective view, you can still see like a shadow here. This kind of like shadow here. So this works like a ghost light. You'll still see a bit of a shadow because obviously it's too big in terms of the size of it. So if I turn the render emitter back on, you can see like the size of it here. So maybe the width can go something like 20. And then you'll see a different kind of effect here. So I'm going to leave the width as 30. That's fine. Nobody's going to know apart from you because you're watching this video that I've got a spotlight there and that it's got a cylinder geometry there, because when we go to the camera here, you cannot see that. So if I click onto our character, you wouldn't even know that was there. So I'm going to go to my spotlight 2 here. Now at the moment, it's kind of pointing my spotlight to this part. I want to bring it out this way. So I'm going to use the rotation here and I'm going to rotate the angle, which I believe it's going to be the red one here. So I'm going to go to my camera here and I'm going to move this and see what we get, because it's too harsh here. I don't like the harshness of the lighting here. It's too strong here. So I want to just rotate this camera, rotate the spotlight so we can make that slightly less harsh. Control the lighting. Another way of controlling the lighting is to move the spotlight angle. So if it's right next to something, let's move it. Cool. And again, the intensity here, let me boost it up to something like 75. Does that make a difference? Maybe if I reduce the spread angle to 135, it's going to become far more brighter, isn't it? No, I want the spread angle to be 180. I want to be as wide as possible. So at the moment, that scene looks so much more better than what we had before. We've got some colors here. We've got this nighttime scene coming here. And then we've got this bright light here. Now at the moment, this light here is a bit too bright. We need to look at that. So if we go to spotlight 1, which was our blue light here, I'm going to reduce the intensity to something like 75. Let's reduce that. Probably reduce that a little bit more. Let's put it something like 60. There we go. So this is more dominant light now. So your eye is going to go straight there because you can tell this is more nighttime scene. Your eye is going to go straight there because that's where our main light source is for our fountain here. So currently I'm happy with that lighting there. It looks pretty decent. It looks a lot better than it did before. We have some colors here. It looks a bit more dramatic with the shadows. We have our character here. Looks pretty good so far. However, we can do better. So as I'm looking at this scene here, I'm looking at these leaves there, these vines. Is there something I can do here? Because at the moment, although the scene looks pretty good, we've got our yellowish, orangish light here, and then we've got the blue coming here as well. We could do something here as well. It looks a bit too plain. I feel like we need something here to make it look even better. So what I'm thinking about is these branches here, making them emissive perhaps. So I'm going to go to my scene here where it says scene props, which is the scene here. It's a group. I've created a group. I'm going to open that. I'm going to expand that group. I'm going to go to the pergola here and expand that one more time. And then we have inside ivy. I'm going to go to surfaces here, expand that here. And then we have the options here. We have branch, flower, and leaf. So what I want to do is I want the branch. I want to have the branch to have some form of lighting, just to give a bit more lighting to the scene. So at the moment, I can't make this emissive because we're using a different shader. I want to use the Iray shader. So in order to do that, I need to make sure it's selected in my Surfaces tab, which it is, the branch. I'm going to go to presets here, shaders, Iray, going to expand that, go to emissives and double click on that. Now that's made it emissive, as you can see in the scene here. I can go to editor, and when we come back to this, it looks very familiar now, the Iray shader we all know and love. As we scroll down, we can see here we've got the emission color here, the temperature, and the luminance settings here as well. So the other thing I want to do is remove the leaf and the flower. Now, I can't remove it like this. There is no cutout opacity for this. So I'm going to click Control and click on my leaf and flower so they're both selected. I'm going to go to my presets. I'm going to go to Iray here and turn them into the Iray Uber shader, make them use that one. Go to editor here, and now I can see the cutout here and I can remove them. So you'll see in the scene as I remove both of them, they'll disappear. I don't want them, just want the branch. So I'm going to do the Iray preview here. Let's have a quick look. There's my branch there. So when I go to emission here, I'm going to change a couple of settings. The temperature, I'm going to put to the default 6500. The luminance settings, I'm going to go for the 1000 of that version here, 1000, which means I have to dramatically reduce the luminance here. Otherwise it becomes crazy bright here. We don't want that. So we'll start with something like 100. See what that looks like. That's what it looks like. So we got a bit more lighting in the scene. We need to think about the color, because currently we were using color theory, which we were using our complementary colors, which was the blue is going to complement the orange or the yellow here. That's how it works, complementary. But now, because we've got 3 different colors, we need to think about what color we are going to use in terms of this, so everything matches in terms of colors. If you remember the Canva tool, we had the color wheel tool here. Here's a complementary. So as I move around my primary color, if I was having blue, it tells me what orange or what complementary color I need to use so they work in conjunction together. If I go down here and we look at Triadic, 3 colors now. So I'm using blue at the moment, some form of blue. It looks like this roughly. So now I know I need to use some form of green here now, and I need to use some form of red here, or some sort of reddish, purplish color here in order to get that coloring. So you can see how important color theory is, this tool here, which we used, which I gave you the link to in part 3. So I'm using this. So all the learnings that we've got from part 3, I use this as well. So I'm showing you that I use this to help me to light my scenes. So I know now that I can have like a bluish kind of color, and then the other color needs to be some sort of reddishy, pinkishy kind of color almost. And then we need to have green. So now I need to change the colors I've got in my scene to match this Triadic color theory. Back into my scene. So I can leave the blue spotlight as it is. That here, this yellow needs to turn to green. So I'm going to turn that to green here. Or I can have it as red, whatever you want. So let me go back to my spotlight 2, I believe it is, parameters here. And we could try it. So let me try some form of green. We'll go for this one here. What does it look like? That's a dark kind of green. Maybe needs to be a bit more brighter, so we can go for that one there. There we go. And then I'm going to try this as red here, or some sort of purposely red. So let me go back to the inside ivy here, surfaces for the branch here, and change that color to some form of red. So let's try some of these presets here. Let's try that one there. That's too dark. I don't like that. Let's try that one there. Now let's boost this color up to something like 500, see what that looks like. That doesn't look too bad, that looks okay. Maybe it is a bit too bright, so I can reduce that to something like 350 maybe. And maybe that color really needs to be a bit more different, so it needs to be red, but it needs to be a bit more pinkishy, purpleshy red, so something like, just thinking, what could it be? Maybe it needs to be something like this. No, I'm gonna stick with the original red. I think that looked better there. So there's our green now, there's our red there, and then this, we've got this blue light here. So we're trying to stick to this color theory as best as we can. Now obviously the color isn't perfect, like the exact color code here is not the exact what I'm using in DAZSTUDIO. That's fine, it doesn't need to be exact. What it needs to be is some form of that triadic. You're thinking about that colors, you're thinking a bit more methodically about using those colors. It doesn't have to be the exact colors, it's up to you. Again, art, right? Art is subjective. You don't need to have the exact same colors of this particular color code here, the hex code here. You don't need to use the exact code. You could if you wanted to, but this is helping you think about that more. So we've got to a scene that is a bit more better in terms of using that color theory. Now again, this may change when we think about our spectral rendering. So that's fine as it is. I'm happy with that. And the reason why I'm happy with that so far is because when we go into part 5 of this PLP framework, which is post work, I'm going to show you how we can control the lighting when we do our renders, how we can control the lighting, how it really doesn't matter too much in terms of the intensity of the lighting. And we can always adjust that with the post work, which is why post work is very, very powerful when it comes to your process, your framework, when you are creating your renders. I'm going to leave this as it is. I'm going to go to spectral rendering in my render settings here, and I'm going to turn it on. So let's turn it on. Now the one that I use is Faithful and then CIE 1964. You may see the blue color change a bit when I change to 1964. It's changed already, as you can see here. So when I go to 1964, the blue color has changed a bit. Even the green has changed a bit. The red is more or less the same. So for example, when I turn it off, you'll see that the lighting here of the blue looks different. When I turn it on, you'll see the lighting of that blue kind of change. It goes a bit more subtle here. So I'll need to go back to my spotlight 1 and increase the darkness of that. So I'm going to just dial it down, the value there. I think I'll need to shift it across as well. Something like this. There we go. Cool. May need to adjust the colors here for the inside ivy. For the ivy, for the branch here. So let's see. That looks okay. Maybe if I went super bright red, what would happen? It's going to be super, super bright red, isn't it? It's very powerful lighting there. That looks pretty good, but it takes away from the green in there. So it may be a case of bringing that down a bit, halfway maybe. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Again, I think I might just leave that at 100. We'll leave that as 100. Now, one other thing we need to consider as well is the background. Because at the moment, at the right here, you can see here that this is grey portion here. So I need to think about that. So I need to go to my environment here, where it says type here, or backdrop. And I don't want it to be white. See, it's changed white here. I want it to be black because it's nighttime scene. So I'm going to change that to black here. There you go. So now it looks so much more better. So when we go back to here, you can't see that bit there where it was the bottom right here where it was white. It's all black now. That's what I wanted. So right now, this scene looks so much more better than it did before. Really happy with the way this turned out. So in part 5, what we're going to be doing is taking this render and applying post work. Now the post work we're going to be applying is a brand new skill that I've learned that I'm going to share with you in part 5. So join me for that. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button or the notification bell so you don't miss out any more great videos that are going to help you create even better renders. So don't forget to leave a comment down below if you have any questions or if you want to add to this video. Please do share your knowledge. This is what this community is all about. As I said, I'm sharing my knowledge freely here. If you want to share your knowledge as well, that's absolutely amazing because that's how we become better. That's how we make progress. That's what it's all about. So don't forget to leave a comment down below as well. And until next week's video, always be learning.